Watch how fast our ultimate comes back up with a brand new update to the buff on preparation. This brand new rogue build that I've never seen anyone play before is going to focus in on being as fast as possible in terms of clearing the nightmare dungeons with the newer buffs with more density. With preparation, it allows you to basically be able to 100% uptime. I don't even have perfect cooldown in the gameplay here that you guys are seeing, and pretty much that ultimate is able to keep up with our legendary node that gives us the bonus damage when we activate our ultimate. We can keep that up 100% of the time, and even though it has a 50-second cooldown, we can still keep that up the whole time, which is significantly going to increase our speeds. If you are in a nightmare dungeon, you pretty much get to keep it up most of the time. I'd say it's almost 100%. If you have perfect cooldown reduction and you're relatively fast, yeah, you'll be able to keep it up, and it's a huge game changer in terms of damage, in terms of ramping things up, getting all of your extra hit chances on all these additional procs. It really makes the build so much faster. But that's the biggest difference with this insane new rogue build. But let's go ahead and hop into the build. Alrighty, let's start off with the skills. So what has changed in terms of min-maxing going to level 100? Well, it's always about dropping your generator, your primary, your basic skill in most of the Diablo games, so you can do your thing that does most damage. So puncture is basically something we don't use at all, but if you're in the leveling process and you're using this video as a kind of a leveling guide, definitely check out the previous videos. But I would recommend in the later stages for most builds in Diablo, if you can, just drop your generator because it doesn't really do that much damage. But pretty much here, spam and twisting blades, we're using the improved twisting blades so we can apply daze. That's going to also apply a knockdown. They also buffed siphoning strikes a while back, so it's a little bit better. It used to be way better. It used to always give you that heal on crit, but now it's a lucky hit and a % chance that it will heal you. But you still need it because in order to activate Temerity's overheal to get the barrier, you do need some source, which we have momentum as well as siphoning strikes to help out with that. And then we're just running shadow step over here, and then we're running concussive. That's why we run improved twisting blades, so we can apply the knockdown, and once we crit them, they're going to be knocked down and we can get additional crit. And then we're just running dash just for extra mobility, and it's kind of nice just to move out of explosions and stuff. And then we have weapon masteries for some more damage. Then we got concealment, lets you move faster. And then with enhanced concealment, this is another way where we can generate resource. It's only really relevant when you're doing bosses in the nightmare dungeon, but you can also swap to inner sight. But I really like it for the extra burst of a resource. Then we're also running agile for more survivability, as well as dark shroud for more survivability. And we are also getting the subverting dark shroud, which gives us an increase of movement speed because I like to go really fast. And then running exploit and malice. And here's where it gets into the cool part of the build that makes it a little bit more unique. So the barber is one of the best things in the entire game. It's basically the best thing that season 1 has got. So with consuming shadows, the barber explosion, and to answer the question that I frequently get asked all the time is, Sladra, how do you have unlimited energy? And it's because consuming shadows, the pop explosion, will actually count as shadow damage. You can see my energy. I have no resource generator and it just goes right back up. It's super overpowered. Consuming shadows works without having any imbuements here. If you really want to though, you could maybe throw in poison imbuement and remove dash just for bosses, but for the most part, you'll see it in the gameplay here. We're going to do Hell Tides, then we're going to do regular dungeon, and then a nightmare dungeon. You'll see once we get to the boss, if I want to, poison imbuement can be used, but you can just utilize the ability to swap to inner sight, and then you won't have any resource problems. And then we're running Frigid Finesse because this is a min-max build. You want Penitent Greaves. If you don't have Penitent Greaves, don't get Frigid Finesse. It's not going to be worth it. I'll put a few different variants of the build in the pinned comment. So if you're maybe missing, let's say, Temerity the pants, then you can have a different build for you guys. So I'll put several links for you. And then on top of that, if you don't have really high cooldown reduction, getting Death Trap is really good. You still activate on the Paragon board one of the legendary nodes to give you a 10x multiplicative damage. So it's really good just to use Death Trap if you don't have have cooldown reduction, but if your cooldown reduction is good, you want to run Shadow Clone. Shadow Clone also breaks the CC if you are stuck. Well, it gives you unstoppable for 5 seconds. On top of that, the Supreme Shadow Clone just gives you additional damage. It really helps clear out a lot of stuff, and it's really, really good overall. And I prefer it over Death Trap, but if you want to run Death Trap, it's fine. They're both very, very good ultimates. Just don't run Rain of Arrows. Okay, and then Aftermath is really good because the more energy we spend, the more ultimates we will get, because it basically gives us a bunch of cooldown reduction, because when we pop our ultimate, it gives us all of our cooldowns back, which is insane. And then we have Adrenaline Rush, just because we need haste, just so we can move a little faster. And then we have momentum to give us additional HP. So, in terms of the pieces of gear, let's go over the gear now. So, in terms of the gear, this is what we want, and I'll mouse over, and you'll see what's really cool with this website, Mobalytics, is that it has all the gear stat priority listed 1, 2, 3, 4, so you guys know what pieces of gear will have, like, the stat priorities that you want. And I'll kind of mention the most important ones. So, Cheats Aspect is really good, and this is starting off in the category of the helmet. So the two most important things that you want are maximum life and cooldown reduction. If you can get maximum energy, dexterity, armor, that's all good as well. And then next up for our chest piece over here, we want it to be, it can be the aspect of disobedience here, and what we mainly want is maximum life, damage reduction from close enemies, damage reduction. You can also get armor, and then dexterity. Any variants of those are good, but the two more important ones are max life and damage reduction from close. And then we're running at Edge Masters over here. This is going to be our gloves. So in our gloves, we want ranks to twisting blades, then we want crit strike chance, attack speed, as well as dexterity, or you can get lucky hit chance. It's up to you on that. And then for the pants, Temerity. Temerity got a massive buff basically in the patch 1.1.1, and that allowed us to basically have a bunch of HP added as our base total life versus just like the flat life that we would get on our character, excluding all of the additional life. So basically rubies, the Paragon board, any bonus life, before it wouldn't count. Now Temerity is pretty much best in slot. If you still have the older Temerities, you do definitely want to get the upgraded ones, because the old ones rolled with all stats and the new ones roll with maximum life. So it's a massive difference to get the newer version of Temerity. And then we're running Penance and Grief, so we can get a 10x multiplicative damage. Well, it's an up to, it's a 7 to 10, but these are great to apply the chill. That really helps out with clearing out content, because you get way more damage and it slows everything down. The slow is relatively low, however, just applying the crowd control effect to the enemies, slowing them down, it's going to get you a lot more damage. And then for our weapon, what we are going to try to prioritize is getting crit strike damage, vulnerable damage, core skill damage, dexterity. This is really, really important to make sure that you get a lot of main stat, which could be actually all stats or dexterity on your two-handed. And the reason why is the number just goes up a lot higher. And we want to use our Blade Dancer's aspect on this because it's going to give us more value. And as far as the amulet goes, we're going to be running the aspect of the Stolen Vigor. So what this allows us to do is each stack of momentum is going to actually heal us. That is going to be something that is at the very end. So we are running momentum, so we get extra damage reduction, extra energy regeneration, and increased movement speed when we have our stacks of momentum. And that's also going to apply a massive amount of life every single time. And we want this in the amulet because amulet gives you a bonus of 50% stats of whatever the aspect is. Very good stuff. The amulet's important things are going to be cooldown reduction, and then movement speed is really good. Energy cost reduction is also really good. And since we are running preparation, energy cost reduction could be something if you want to. If you have your rings that happen to have bonus energy, then you may not need to actually run energy cost reduction, because we want to spend as much resource as possible. I still prefer running energy cost reduction, but if you want to, you can opt to not play it. So what happened was preparation actually surprisingly got a buff out of like nowhere, and what it does is it makes it so every 100 energy we spend, and since our resource just goes right back up to the top, we could just spam Twisting Blades the whole time. That's why we don't want a generator. It's going to allow us to reactivate our ultimate again and again. That's how we have our ultimate basically on no cooldown. Essentially, it has 100% uptime, and that allows us to keep on using it. And when we have preparation, and we will swap, you'll see in the gameplay later, when we go to a boss in Nightmare Dungeon, we actually want to swap from preparation to swap into Inner Sight really quick, unless you can kill the boss within the first rotation, which is entirely possible. But just in case anyone wants to use this to level up, and if you don't have all the perfect pieces of gear and you don't have the damage, you do want to swap to Inner Sight on the bosses. But this doesn't cost anything to swap. You can swap your specialization at any time. So yeah, that's why we want to have energy cost reduction if you want to. That's why I had to kind of mention mention that kind of stuff there. But cooldown reduction is a must. And then if you can get any sort of damage reduction from close, or if you want to get extra damage, you can get bonus points into Frigid Finesse. It's one of the best ones that Rogue has, but it doesn't really matter too much. Just make sure you get cooldown reduction, and then the rest, it's kind of up to you. And then in terms of our rings, we are looking for the exact same things on both of the rings. So we want crit strike chance. That's the most important thing. Has to be 5 crit strike chance at the very beginning, and you upgrade it to 5 out of 5, giving you 7.5 crit strike chance. And then we want crit damage, vulnerable damage, and maximum life. Alternatively, you can get resource generation, you can get lucky hit chance, but you must get critical strike chance. That's one of the most important things. And then on top of that, we are running the increased damage while you have a barrier. So this allows us to scale our damage a lot higher. That's why some people are asking, how are you just clearing out things a lot faster? It's just because we have a lot more damage. Temerity allows us to basically get an additional set of damage. And then also, if you want to, this is where it kind of becomes an option. I personally prefer Inner Calm. It allows you to, on certain bosses, just melt them, because some bosses, they take a second to kind of come out. And because of that, you can stand perfectly still and you can basically one rotation the enemy. Or if over there the boss was frozen, if you're playing in a group, you can definitely melt things very, very fast with Inner Calm at the maximum stacks. But this is technically optional. You can run Ravenous, you can run Umbral, it's up to you. But in terms of our other ones on our weapons, again, it's the same thing. You want crit strike damage, vulnerable damage, core skill damage, dexterity, and those are kind of the stats that you want. We're running accelerating aspects, so this is going to make it so our crit strikes with our core skills give us increased attack speed, as well as vengeful aspect, making it so once we make an enemy vulnerable with exploit, the glyph, everything's always vulnerable, so it's going to be real easy. Then we are able to get additional crit strike chance, so that's going to be really good. And again, both of the things, you want them to be swords, by the way. Swords are superior. And then for the gems, we're running emeralds, just like every Diablo build, because they are the best. Rubies or topazes, and then these are going to be the Malignant Hearts, because this is for Season 1. Revenge is really good, by far one of the best things in the game. You can also run the Barber in every single build. These two are like in every build. And then Tempting Fake is really, really good, because your crit strike damage does way more damage, but your non-crits do less damage. This one is fantastic because you're going to have over 50% crit strike chance on the build. And there's a lot of other notes here at the bottom if you guys want to scroll down. That's why I love Mobilytics, because it lets us put a bunch of notes in the build guide. So if there's any confusion, there's a section, FAQ, you can read it, and it really helps out. Now, as far as the Paragon board, because the Paragon board's a little bit more time extensive here, I think the most important thing is going over like what glyphs we're running, and then again, just go to the website, it'll have everything for you. So we want to run on the starter board, we want to run Closer, then we're running Tricks of the Trade, and then we're running Exploit in here, and then we actually are going to go to the left, and the order does matter, by the way, and then we're running over here, we're running Exploit Weakness, and we're throwing in Turf, and then we are going for No Witness and Control. If you don't have the Penitent Greaves, don't get this, because you're not going to be able to chill the enemies. But then after that, it doesn't really matter. 4 and 5 can be interswapped, because you're not going to reach the amount of bonuses anyways. But then we are going to go for Cunning Stratagem, and we're going to be throwing Pride in here. One thing I really like is on the Mobilytics website, which is really nice, and some websites don't have this, is that it has the number in order right here. So this is the 5th board. And then for the final and 6th board over here, we're running Cheap Shot. And also, we did pick up a few extra nodes over here to get extra life. These are optional. Get these more towards the end, but it really helps out with Temerity, because it's going to be able to essentially give you more barrier. But make sure you guys go and scroll down the bottom. If anything is confusing at all, there's a full gameplay loop. There's a step-by-step in terms of like what you are trying to go for in terms of everything on the website. This is a great website that we'll be more likely using going forward for build guides. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up, guys. This is the best rogue build guide that I've seen in the entire game for basically clearing out content. For Uber Lilith, though, I will mention that every build is going to be a little bit different for Uber Lilith, because you kind of need to spec out for different things to combat Uber Lilith. But for the most part, there's going to be the best build guide for the Rogue for Season 1. It's just so fast. I mean, we are just deleting content super fast. I mean, look at my resource. This is the best part of it. You don't have to run a generator. It's super fast. It basically has infinite uptime on our Shadow Clone. You can see over here. Sometimes, if you are running in between targets, and by the way, you can still spend your resource and it will still overlap, and you can still activate it again, but there's no point of activating it like a second time. But there are times where you can overlap it on the cooldown, which is insane. I don't even have perfect cooldown reduction on the gameplay that you guys are seeing. But anyways, that's gonna wrap it up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell so you don't miss out when we update you guys in the future with more Rogue and other build guides in the future. Take care. See you in the next one, and the build will be in the pinned.